Welcome to our Research Like a Pro question and answer series. And today we're going to talk all about creating source citations for FamilySearch images. So I created this answer based on the question about how do I create a citation for an image I found on FamilySearch. This has become a little bit more difficult because the new images, when they pop up on FamilySearch, don't readily tell you how to create a citation, nor does it readily show you a source citation. Some of the other views on FamilySearch will, but if you're looking at a view like this, you may be really puzzled about how to find something for your citation. So we're going to talk all about that today. So this case was about a John O'Connor, and you can see that this was the 1895 state census. Here is the URL for that. And because this is an index collection, when we put in John O'Connor, it finds him, takes us straight to this page, and it gives us the index information, gives us all the basic things. But where in the world do you go to try to find out more details about this besides just Iowa 1895 state census? Well, if you click this little arrow up here at the top, it will give you more details. And then you'll be able to see the group data. So the default is always just the index data. If you click on group data here at the top, it'll give you some suggestions to perhaps go to the research wiki and learn about the page you're on. In this case, it was super general, United States genealogy. That's not going to give us a lot of help on creating a citation for a state census. But down here, we can see more information such as the creator, the custodian, the image group number, and an actual citation that FamilySearch gives you. Now, you could just use that, copy and paste that, but notice that the FamilySearch citation doesn't give you any specifics about your individual. Nowhere do we see John O'Connor here, nor do we see anything like a page number, a line number, a dwelling number. We do see an image number and we do see the repository, but there could be some extra things added here. But let's go through the scenario of wanting to create your own citation and what you might want to include. So our steps to citing sources, we first need to understand the source, and then we create the citation by answering 5 questions. So we're going to look at how to understand a source when you are looking at it on FamilySearch. So the first thing you'll want to do is click on the image and enlarge it so you can actually read all the different little headings, the different items you will see on there. So I would recommend you go through, you really understand what each one of these headings, this is a state census, so it's asking a lot of different questions. You'll want to know every piece of information you can pull out from this. Then once you feel like you really understand what's going on with this, we can go forward. Now just notice it's actually a 2-page, and you can see both pages. These should be just lined up here across from each other, but I put them like this so they'd fit on our slide. But you'll notice there's a page 36 and there's a page 164. So you'll want to try to understand where in the world that numbering is coming from as well. So one of the things that is very helpful is to look at the surrounding images. And this FamilySearch image has the film strip at the bottom, which makes it easy. You can just click on each image to the left, each one to the right, or you can also just advance the image numbers. There's different ways you can look at the surrounding images. But this is really important so you understand the layout. So I like to look for consecutive pages. I like to see if the next page is really the next page, what it should be, or if there's something different going on and how this has been laid out. Now, another tip is to go to the very beginning of the image collection. If it's a microfilm, if you've been working with FamilySearch records a lot, you'll recognize this is an old microfilm number. And if you go to number 1, image number 1 will usually take you right to the beginning of this collection, of the microfilm this collection is based upon. And you could take note of that microfilm number. And then you can start going through page by page as very beginning pieces of the microfilm to discover more about the record. You can see often an image of the original book, and in this case it says Iowa Census Returns, and it has the year 1895. You can see it's for Lynn County. There's a number We don't know what that number's for. That would probably be at the repository, could tell you what that number is. But it gives you an idea of what this actually looks like. And then something very important, you want to view the front matter. This is where you might learn some really important details about how the source was created. So right here at the beginning, this little paragraph here gives some information about what these enumerators were to do. So first of all, it tells them that they have been given blank census forms and they were to fill those out for each household. Before they even went to visit a household, they were to fasten those forms together to make books. And it says before any writing is done therein. And so I would imagine these are pretty large books. From the microfilm, we can't really tell, but they're probably big, heavy books that they had to carry around. And then they were to make an exact copy and file both with the county auditor. So we know that there possibly could be two copies of this, but it's possible also that only one is still in existence. So it's just good to know that perhaps the one we're looking at is the only one in existence, and maybe it is the copy. We just often don't know that. Now, we also can study the instructions. So here is a lot of details about what these enumerators were supposed to do as they went door to door to gather information from all the residents of Iowa in 1895. So if you are looking at those columns and just thinking, oh, that's great, there was just, there's a check mark there, you'll want to really know about this. And the only way you can really do this is to go to the beginning of the film, the beginning of the book, and learn about the instructions, which will really help you in doing your research. So now we've learned quite a bit about that census. Now we are ready to go on and create our citation. And we're going to look at the who, the what, the when, the where is, and the where in for this source. And these questions come from the Genealogy Standards and Mastering Genealogical Documentation. And we're also going to use the principles of a layered citation, which comes from Elizabeth Schoen Mills in her book Evidence Explained, because we definitely have got a physical source and then we have a digital portion because FamilySearch has digitized it. So we're going to be doing two different layers and we'll have those separated with the semicolon. And in this case, we do have an original microfilm, so we might add a third section. So when we create the physical layer, we're just going to go through and think about each one of these. Now, will all of these pieces be included in the final citation? I'll just give you a clue that no, they won't be, because a lot of it is repetitive and we don't need to spell things out over and over again. But for the sake of just understanding citation building, let's look at this. So who created the source for that physical layer? Well, at the beginning of the book that I showed you, it clearly states this was the Iowa Secretary of State. And then the source is the 1895 Iowa State Census. And we put in some descriptors. It's the entry for John O'Connor. He's in Lynn County, Iowa, Rapids Township, 2nd Ward. Now, I was curious because I saw that there were different page numbers. So I showed you page 34 and then I think 165. And I was curious about why those were so different. And I discovered that it was going by wards. So the first number, the 34, was for all the people in the 2nd ward. And the beginning of the microfilm starts with the 1st ward. And so then the numbering on that portion starts over. But the stamped page number, the 164, was for the entire book. So this was for the individual wards. This was for the entire book, which was very interesting. And unless you kind of click around in there and try to understand, you wouldn't know that. So when is the source? Well, it's 1895. Where is it? It is physically housed at the State Historical Society of Iowa in Des Moines. And then specifics within the census, the two different page numbers that are noted, and then the dwelling, 260, and the family, 256. So this gives us a lot of basic information. If we went to the State Historical Society of Iowa and wanted to look at that physical book, we should be able to find it based on all of this information. So that's what you're thinking of when you're creating this. If I wanted to go on site, do I have the information I need to find that book? Now, when we create a digital layer, we're thinking about all of these questions, but for digital. So who created the source? Well, FamilySearch went in and digitized that. What is the source? FamilySearch gave it a collection title. So that goes into quotation marks. The Iowa State Census 1895. And then part of the what is the source is this idea of John O'Connor. It's for him. When is the source? Well, for digital, we usually put the access date when we looked at it. Where is the source? We put the URL. And note that this is an ARK, meaning archival for FamilySearch. So these types of URLs are not supposed to change, so you can feel safe in using those in a citation. If you're using another website, you maybe would want to have just the basic part of the website and then maybe waypoints to show how you got to your record. But in this case, we can feel secure in using the whole URL. Wherein is the source? Well, the image group number is right here. I found that on the digital page, and we have the image 106 of 763. Now you might say, what about that original microfilm number? Well, we could also use that, but I think many of us have just gone to using the image group number for simplicity's sake, because if you're searching in the catalog, you can use either this number or the microfilm number to get you to the correct collection. All right, let's put it together. Now you will see that I did not just take all the physical and all the digital and put it in just like I showed you with the pieces broken out. Instead, we did some condensing so we don't have a lot of duplication. So I will also note that I looked up the suggested format from Elizabeth Shown Mill's latest edition of Evidence Explained. It's on page 267 and it's for systematic statewide censuses, online images, and it's part of her templates, template 13. And I noticed that this was very, very similar to how we do the United States censuses. So let's just look at it. 1895 Iowa State Census, and then we have the location all nailed down here. Lynn County, Iowa. Probably could eliminate the Iowa since we know we're there. Rapids Township, 2nd Ward, page 33, and I put the notation penned and the 164 stamped. You know, now that I know this was for the ward and this for the whole book, I maybe could have put something there, but I decided just to go simple. Dwelling 260, family 256, and it was for John O'Connor. And this should be green. So here's a semicolon noting that this was all the physical layer. Pretend that this is green. And this is the digital layer. Imaged in Iowa State Census, there is the collection in quotation marks. FamilySearch is the creator and the website host, so we italicize that. They are publishing this. We don't need to put FamilySearch at the beginning and then FamilySearch and then FamilySearch in the URL. We're going to condense that a bit. Then publication information is the URL and the date of access, so we put a parenthesis around that. There's that ARK again, signaling that archival URL, the date of access, and then the image group number and the image. And then I have a final layer. Now, instead of citing an original microfilm, because I do already have, a film number here, I put citing the original repository, the State Historical Society of Iowa. And so this was something that was suggested by Elizabeth Shown Mills. And I like that idea because it helps us to see where this actually is housed. Where did this come from originally? FamilySearch, we know, goes out and digitizes these things. And I think it's really helpful to know specifically where they come from. So that's my rationale in putting it all together. You maybe would do that differently. Does it matter? No, not as long as you can get back to the actual digital image or the physical image. And if I were to just give you this citation, you would know quite a lot about the record just by reading the citation. So some tips for creating citations from FamilySearch. Learn about the source. Click around in that digital those images. Really click around on the page, learn as much as you can. Then, if you want to go through an exercise like I did, you could first capture all the physical information, thinking about those 5 questions, and then think about the 5 questions capturing digital, and then put it all together in a layered citation. And remember to try not to do too much duplication. Try to keep things together, but don't overstate things like Iowa over and over again or FamilySearch over and over again. And when you feel like you have got a really nice citation, then save it to your citation template so that the next time you create a citation for, let's say, a state census or a marriage bond or whatever you have figured out, you have a good template to get started with. So I hope that helps you as you're working on your FamilySearch citations, and good luck as you go forward with that. Thank you.